All right, hi. And I don't know how many we have here at this point, but welcome. Like to welcome everyone. I hope giving my experiences as a man on the autism spectrum with romance. I hope that's encouraging to some of the others here, whether they're parents or others who are on the spectrum. Uh, you know, I'm just curious. Is Do we have any audience here yet? Because if not, I should wait probably until we have a few people on. And if you want to do the chat thing, you can kind of let me know you're here, and that way I can proceed. Okay. Hi, Kate. Okay, so Kate is here. All right. And Lorianda. Hi, Lorianda. Okay. And Rachel. Hi, Rachel. And Tanya or Tonya. Okay, hi, Tonya. Welcome here. All right, well, I guess, we've got a quorum, so I'll get started. And, start out really with when I got into high school, because that's when kids, at least in my generation, typically started dating. And high school, I just couldn't fit into the dating scene. I just couldn't navigate it, and so I didn't really date in high school. Uh, I remember other guys boasting about dates. They're on. Hi, Constance or Connie. Hi, Annie. Okay, and one guy was telling me about how he was driving a car with his girlfriend. His girlfriend was running her hand up and down his right side. Well, that memory came back to me many years later. I'll get to that. But essentially, I didn't date in high school. On my freshman year of college, hi, Vulcan. Let's see, my granddaughter McKenna just left me well, that's a Marco Polo message. But anyway, college, some people introduced me to a girl named Valerie, and dated her for a little while. After a while, we found we really weren't about the same things, and we parted ways. And so I wouldn't really date again till after I got out of college and got settled in my first job, had my first apartment and everything. At that time, I was 23, and um, anyway, I went to by then to something else that happened in my life that changed my view of dating, changed my objective in dating. And that's that I had become one of Jehovah's Witnesses, and I've been ever since. Um, and so anyway, I was at a religious assembly, and some people that I knew said they had a young lady. Hi, Norma. How are you doing, Norma? And hi, Danielle. A young lady they wanted to introduce me to. Hi, Vulcan. So, and so they introduced me to her, and then afterward, on a subsequent day, some others, as we got there in the morning, encouraged me to ask her to sit with me. She said maybe she would like you to sit with her, and so I asked her, and I approached her and asked her after others had coached me to ask her, and she said sure. And so we sat together, and during lunch break we talked, and at the end of the afternoon session, I asked her out to dinner the following Sunday, and she said yes. So we started dating, and we gradually got to know each other, and we dated through the remainder of the year, and we were getting increasingly attracted to each other, and finally it was in December that I very awkwardly brought up the subject of marriage, and Judy had to ask. Uh, uh, the Judy was her name, by the way. Judy had to ask, "Is this a proposal?" And I said, "Well, yes, it is." And anyway, she said yes. So we went and got a ring, and you know, and even at that, neither one of us had ever told the other, the three magic words speak of, the words "I love you," and she was the first one to say that to me. It was, I still had a lot of the awkwardness I'd had through high school and college. It wasn't really gone. And I remember when we were planning our wedding, one thing we've talked about too here, and another Focus Live uh, lady talked about this, the theory of mind. And Judy's parents had a lot of difficulty understanding why we didn't want to use the traditional wedding marches in our wedding. And they were like, they didn't think a wedding was a valid wedding without them. And I couldn't understand that. To me, that went contrary to my logic. What about all the couples that got married before Wagner and Mendelssohn were even born? Were all their marriages invalid? Were all the children they had illegitimate? To me, it didn't make sense. But many years later, my daughter explained to me that yes, that was how they felt. It's a matter of a totally different way of thinking. They have this tremendous need for things to be quote unquote normal, and that went against that need they had. But in any case, we got married. We got married on August 28th, 1971. After we'd been dating almost a year and a half. Now, some wonder, what about physical intimacy? How was that? It took us a few tries, but we got it together. And as evidenced, a year and a day after a wedding date, our daughter was born. She was our only child. Yeah, thank you, Vulcan. Hey, Alba. And so, when Dorothy was 3 years old, hi, Veronica. When Dorothy was 3 years old. It was in December 1975. We moved from the Chicago area where we had lived at the time. We moved to Virginia, and we met a whole bunch of new friends there, and one of them, and we'll be getting back to her a little later. One of them was a lady by the name of Lois Lewis. She had recently separated from her husband. Her husband was an advisor to Senator Henry Jackson from the state of Washington. And a couple of years later, their divorce became final. And a few years after that, she moved to Connecticut. And we went up there and visited her as we were going on vacation. We were going to Prince Edward Island, but on the way we visited her in New Haven, where she had moved, and we also visited some friends that had moved to Cape Cod, and then we went on to our destination in Canada. And so, and Lois was somebody we kept in touch with over the years, though, as we kept in touch with other people. A couple of things, the traditions Judy and I always kept. One was we always made a point of our anniversary. We also every year remembered the anniversary of the day we met each other. We traveled many places. Judy loved the Disney parks. In fact, we honeymooned at Disneyland in California, and so we made many trips to Walt Disney World in Florida. And Dorothy enjoyed that. It was during my marriage to Judy that I learned about autism. Judy told me she found there's this movie she was going to watch on TV. It was about the program for educating autistic children. I had never heard the term autistic before. I didn't know what it meant. She said their children are kind of in their own little dream world. And it seemed like I at times felt like I was kind of off in my own little world. But then I saw them spinning the wheels and their toys endlessly, and I said, no, I never did that. So, they're a little more extreme of a dream world than I had ever been in. So I kind of dismissed it. But, uh, you know, um, Judy had some handicaps of her own. I don't think she would be considered to be on the autism spectrum because she seemed to be able to pick up on social cues. Hey, Linda. Hey, how are you doing? She seemed to be able to pick up on social cues, but still she had her own issues. And among other things, she had a serious eating problem. Her relationship with food was almost the same as the relationship of an alcoholic with alcohol. And she put on a huge amount of weight and ruined her health in the process. But and anyway, and I'm going to digress for a minute, though, get into how I came to learn about my autism. And some here that are listening have heard the story already, but I'll tell it again. And if you haven't heard it, you're hearing it now for the first time. But I read an article, first of all, in February 1995. There was an article in Awake magazine about autism, and I read it. And, of course, the article was about classic autism, what we would now call level 2 or level 3 autism. And so, I again said no, but then I saw about special abilities. Well, I have a special ability in math, and I mentioned math specifically as one of the areas in which some autistic people have special abilities. And after I read that, and some other things I could relate to a little bit, but not to the degree described in the article, I wondered if there's a milder form of this, but then I kind of forgot about it for a while until later that year, December of that year, turned on the TV and there was a movie coming on, a movie that my daughter had been urging me to see. And it was coming on TV, movie Rain Man. Well, I watched that movie and I couldn't help but notice the similarities between Raymond and myself. I mean, he was, much more severely impaired. I mean, for example, he could do math far beyond my ability. The ability that he could multiply like 10-digit numbers together in his head and so on. Give me 2 3-digit numbers, I'll multiply them in my head, but 10 digits, I can't. If you drop a whole thing of toothpicks, over 100 toothpicks, I'm not going to be able to tell you right off the bat how many there are either. But, on the other hand, he couldn't solve a simple practical problem involving numbers. When he was asked to apply it to a practical matter, he was lost. Well, now I'm not that severely affected, but I could see that. So after I watched the movie, I looked up autism in the Mayo Clinic Family Medical Guide. And right at the end of the discussion of autism, it said there is also a milder form of autism whose main symptom is social awkwardness. Bingo. That was me. Well, I mentioned it to my mom. I started out by saying, this is going to sound crazy, and then I told her and she said, it doesn't sound crazy to me at all. I think you're on to something. And when I mentioned it to my sister, she said the same thing. And so, later I turned on an NPR station and I heard an interview with Temple Grandin about the book that she had then just released, Thinking in Pictures, and she was talking about the book. So I went out and got a copy of the book, read it, And after reading it, I was definitely convinced. I knew some of the terminology by then. So I called the president of the local chapter of the Autism Society of America, and she gave me the name of a neurologist who specialized in autism, and he made the formal diagnosis. Well, that was in the summer of 1996, and I was diagnosed. It was in August of 1996, that Judy's health problems finally caught up with her for good. She suffered a respiratory failure, had to be taken to the hospital. The doctors said, she's not going to come out of this. I remember that was on a Friday. That Sunday, I went to the hospital in the morning, spent the morning at Judy's bedside, and then I went and grabbed a bite of lunch and went to the Kingdom Hall because we had a meeting in the afternoon at the time, congregation I was in. So I went to the Kingdom Hall. Well, there was another congregation that met in the morning, and Aloysius' daughter, who had moved to Virginia several years earlier to get married and was now living in Virginia, was in that congregation. She heard the announcement. People were coming up to me left and right as I was approaching the Kingdom Hall and offering their condolences. As I entered the hall, Kim intercepted me and she said, "There's somebody outside who wants to see you." And so anyway, I went out there. I knew right away who it was. I knew it had to be Aloysius, had to be your mother. And we talked just a couple of minutes out there, but Kim later would tell us that on that occasion, she said she sensed an electricity between her mother and me, and she saw what might develop from it. "Hey, Lorianda, you're pregnant with Brandon in August 1996 at that time." "Yeah, all right. Yeah." Well, that Friday, after we had two opinions from two doctors that the conditions were met, and in which Judy had said in her durable power of attorney that she wanted to be disconnected with life support. Two doctors that both told us that those conditions were met, and so she was disconnected from life support. And so my daughter and I, my daughter's name is Dorothy, by the way. Okay, my daughter Dorothy and I made a list of names of people to call, and we called them. One person we forgot about was Aloysius, but she heard about it from somebody else. Anyway, we made arrangements for the memorial service to be held late that Sunday afternoon, and I was surprised at the end of the memorial service to see Aloysius there, and she said she was going to head straight home from there. But then a friend of Judy's, Maureen, another friend of Judy's, same one. In fact, we visited her in Cape Cod back in 1981, and she was now back in Virginia. She had repast at her house after the memorial service. So, after bringing the flowers home, then I went over to the memorial service, and there was Aloysius standing outside Maureen's house. And so I said, I'm not going to have a bite of food until I talk with her. And so we talked a long time. Aloysius had lost 3 family members earlier that year herself. First, her brother, who was on the down low, had died from AIDS. Then her father had died from old age. And then she had a nephew who had been gunned down in the streets of New Haven. So, I would say we comforted each other there, and we talked at length. And in subsequent weeks, we called each other and from time to time. Kim, at one point, asked me if I talked to the mother lady. I said I've been trying to call her, but having a bit older, she coached me, said, you have to call her after 10 o'clock in the evening. That's the only time she's home. So that's what I did. And so, we would talk occasionally. And then Eloise began to get uncomfortable with my calls. And so she called uh, uh, another lady we knew, a mutual friend, a lady by the name of Jerry. And she, asked Jerry how to get me to stop calling her. And so Jerry told her, and this is something I learned about much later about this whole conversation. But anyway, Jerry told her, I think that brother's interested in you. And Eloise told her, can't be. And Jerry said, yes, I think he's interested in you. Can't be. Oh, why can't it be? Eloise goes, can't be. Oh, why can't it be? And Eloise told her, trust me, it just can't be. The next time I called Eloise, she was ready for me. And as soon as we exchanged initial pleasantries, she said something that was intended to send me running. She said, nothing personal. I don't want you to take this personally or anything, but I am sick to death of white folks. And when that didn't send me running, then she tried the race issue from another angle. She asked, do your parents know you've been talking with a black woman? How do your parents feel about race? And, that didn't send me running either. Well, I wasn't sure, exactly where I stood or what my next move should be after that. So that Saturday night, though, I called Jerry because I knew Jerry was friends with Eloise. And so we started talking. And at first, Jerry was acting like she didn't know anything at her end. And then she started laughing. Well, she didn't tell me everything that was said in her conversation with Eloise. She just gave it the most positive spin she could give it, and said, if anybody's going to pursue anybody, you're going to have to pursue her. And so that let me know what I needed to do. So the following night, I called Eloise. Well, now I had made arrangements. See, my company had scheduled classes. They wanted all their technicians to be trained in this new software they'd come out with, and they wanted us to go to their corporate headquarters on Long Island to get trained. And so I scheduled myself for the week of October 21st through 26th. That's a Monday through Saturday. So I called Eloise on, this is Sunday, September 29th, and I told her that I told her about the class, and I said I'd like to swing by New Haven and come visit her the weekend before that. Well, Eloise wasn't going to tell me to get lost, but she wanted to help me to see that this wasn't a good idea. So she gave me her work phone number and her mother's phone number. And we started talking every day. And she would raising different issues, and I guess I had the right answers for everything she raised. And anyway, as the second weekend in October was approaching, people who knew Eloise could see there was something different about her. People could see it with me too. There's a glow about each of us. I was in Virginia now, and Eloise was in Connecticut. So it was all long distance phone calls that we were communicating by. And so we were both falling in love with each other. And that Sunday, anyway, I broke the ice and told Eloise that I loved her. And that weekend, I came up, and I stayed at a hotel in Milford, and she took me around to meet family members on Saturday, and a couple of friends of hers. And then Sunday, we had our first date in person. We went to restaurant in New Haven. And then during the following week, while I was in Long Island, we talked in the evenings, and she said she would like to get together the following weekend, and I made arrangements for us to go to dinner and a Broadway show. Hey, Miranda, yeah, and that's right. And so, and I sent her flowers, but she had to go jump through some hoops to get, because they came to her house when she was at work during the day. She was an X-ray technician, worked at a orthopedist's office in Brantford, Connecticut, which is about 5, maybe 10 kilometers east of New Haven. There's 2 towns east of New Haven, East Haven, and there's Brantford. And you go east from there. Oop. Okay, I lost this for a minute. So anyway, and then that Thursday night, I proposed her over the phone, and she accepted. And so when we went out to dinner, the Broadway show was to celebrate our engagement. And when we came out of the Broadway show, people were celebrating in the streets, and I knew right away the Yankees had won the World Series. That was Saturday, October 26th. And so I drove her back. She was staying that night at her friend Aquanetta's apartment in the Bronx. That's where I picked her up from. So I took her back to Aquanetta's apartment, and they were going down Jerome Avenue. People were beeping in the horns all down Jerome Avenue, celebrating the Yankees' victory. So they got out of the car, walked her, parked, managed to find a street parking space, walked her up to Aquanetta's apartment. The guy staggers up to us. And I thought, oh, what does he want? He goes, "Who's the best?" So everybody told him, "The Yankees." That's all he wanted to hear. So we always remembered that. Anyway, through the rest of that fall and into the winter, I traveled to Connecticut numerous times. She traveled to Virginia several times. Also, I got to meet her homegirls, and we'll get back to them a little later. But during my next trip to Connecticut after that, she took me by the place where she worked, and I committed the number to memory. It was 1224 Main Street in Brantford. I committed that number to memory. I remember it was 35 squared minus 1. That's how I remembered it. So that point on, when I sent her flowers, I sent them to her job. And she always called me immediately to thank me profusely. And it's something that has struck me, because to me, it struck me as illogical to send flowers that are going to die in short order to somebody. That would be so valued. But I've come to appreciate how much it means to a woman to receive flowers. And I got a reaction too from her coworkers. But yeah. Anyway, during one of my trips to New Haven, we drove up from New Haven to Farmington, Connecticut, which is up quite a ways in the northern part of the state, because the photographer she engaged for our wedding was there. And I remember on the way there, I was driving her car, and she was kissing my right hand as we were driving. And I thought back to that guy telling me about how his girlfriend was running her hand up and down his side as he was driving, and that brought back to my mind. But I was thinking, if he could see me now, but something I've come to appreciate too is a difference between 3 things. A lot of people get these things confused. attraction, infatuation, and love confused. But I've come to appreciate that, you know, attraction, it's just what people see generally. Or a blind person can be attracted to someone too. You know, sense of hearing probably involved there usually, but it's driven largely by the senses. Um, you know, infatuation driven by what a person feels, uh, and usually has little to do with reality. Love is driven by what we know, because I chose to pursue Heloise because I had great respect for her. I had a high regard for her as a person, and that was the same reason too why she was willing to listen to me, and why she didn't just tell me to get lost. Why she was willing to listen. See, what I didn't know is that Eloisa told all her friends that there was no way she would ever consider dating, much less marrying interracially. And because I didn't know that she told all her friends that, but you know, those words she had to eat. And so anyway, April 19th, 1997, we got married. One other thing I remember was when we went to get our marriage license on February 28th of that year. We went to the town hall in Hamden, Connecticut, and yeah. Thank you, Lorienda. We went to the town hall in Hamden, and the town clerk was a middle-aged lady, and she took a look at us, and she said it was great to see that there's life after 50. But you know, then we went to Hawaii, stayed in a hotel called the Princeville Hotel on the island of Kauai, because the lady with whom I worked had said that was the best romantic spot in all of Hawaii, and it lived up to its billing, and that was an idyllic honeymoon. We and you know, was everything we could hope that it would be like, and we found ourselves taking on different identities toward each other. She could be my wife, my concubine, my girlfriend, or my fresh neighbor. I could be her husband, Charlie, her boyfriend, Robert, or I could be Der Gans, this German dude who would kidnap her and take her various places where he would have his way with her. 1998, we had the treat of traveling to London for one of our international religious conventions. And that was a special treat for us. And I remember some of the others in our tour group were a little shocked at the way we interacted with each other, particularly when Eloise would say to me, "Come here, white boy." But that was her pet name for me. Eloise decided, Eloise was a few years older than I was. I was 50 at the time we got married. Eloise was 54, going on 55. And, so she was past her childbearing years. But she decided we should have some children of our own. So she went out and bought 3 lifelike dolls, and we gave them names. We named, first one she got named Juanisha Tabisha Gies. And then the second one, the boy doll, we named Xerxes Xenophon Gies. And the third was a girl we named Tashima Faunetta Gies. And also Heloisa's cousin gave us a big girl rag doll. So we named her Zaniqua Lashonda. And so, and I still continued, to send Heloise flowers from time to time. And I remember one time, I served in our congregation. I served at the time as what was called a ministerial servant. Ministerial servants take care of various duties connected with the congregation. I was in charge of the accounts, and from time to time they would give us one-day school. And in one of the sessions, in one of the schools, they said they made it a project. You know, tonight when you go home, tell your wife that you love her. And that was kind of shocking to me because I never let a day go by without telling Lois that I loved her, telling her more than once. And then I was shocked that they would have to give an instruction like that. I'd have to remind men to do that. But in any case, you know, that was we did. Lois and I got to have a number of travel adventures. Went to Florida, went on a cruise, went to Niagara Falls. We went to, and Niagara Falls is a place I've been in each of my marriages. We went to Las Vegas twice. She's the only one I've been to Las Vegas with. We don't gamble, you know, but we went and took in the shows and, you know, enjoyed. In fact, you can stay in some really nice hotels for less money than you'd pay elsewhere for that level of luxury in a hotel, because they hope that you will spend time gambling there. But you know, over the years, you know, Heloise had some medical issues and they got worse, and she was having increasing mobility problems. She was increasingly in more or less constant pain. And this was tough for her because she was a really dynamic woman, liked to get around, liked to go around and do things. And, you know, now she couldn't get around like she liked to. I mean, now in one thing, in summer of 2006, both our daughters moved away from the area. My daughter Dorothy moved to Maine because my parents had moved there, and my dad died in April of 2006. So Dorothy moved up there so she could be available to help out my mom. My brother was there also, but Dorothy also was there to give some help. Kim and her husband moved to North Carolina, and she's still living there since. But so we sometimes would travel to visit her. Finally, in 2010, you know, all the doctors were telling Heloise that they really couldn't do anything further to relieve her pain unless she got hip replacement surgery. She really needed that, and she had to get that taken care of. And she knew it was risky with all the health issues she had, but she went in, and apparently she must have contracted an infection in the operating room, but she started having complications afterward, and turned out that, you know, it was an infection which developed into generalized sepsis, and she ended up dying without a week and a half after the surgery without leaving the hospital. Well, Kim had come up with the intention of helping her mother out after the surgery, but now, you know, Kim and her son Donovan, my grandson by marriage, they were staying there anyway in the apartment, and they were a source of comfort to me, you know, having them there for the remainder of the month of December, and you know, then to you know, I made arrangements that summer, instead of going to the summer convention I normally would go to in Richmond, I arranged to go down to Winston-Salem to be at the convention that Kim attended. And so you know, in February, now my daughter had moved from Maine to Hawaii. She would move back to Maine after a little over a year, but she was in Hawaii at that moment anyway. So I went out to visit her. She was east of Honolulu in an area called Hawaii Kai. And so that was a nice visit with her and the grandchildren. By then, I had two grandchildren. You know, now they're grown up. My granddaughter McKenna is 21. She'll be 22 in February. My grandson Ronan is 19. At that time, that was in 2011, and McKenna was just about to turn 12, and Ronan then would have been 9. So, but in any case, we spent time together. That was encouraging. But got home, and and loneliness began to set in. And I began to think, this is getting old. I had thought I can't fall in love again, and it's going to take years before I can get over Heloise. But I had to realize this coming home to an empty apartment is getting old. And I began making it a matter of prayer, and I also began, the thought about when would I be ready. And I said, for one thing, I have to be over her to a certain extent before I begin talking to anybody else, and I definitely cannot propose marriage to anyone as long as these 2 big wedding pictures are hanging in my apartment. I have to take those down before I can propose to anyone. But those pictures weren't keeping me company. And it was funny. I had videos of Heloise's bridal shower and of our wedding. I had watched those frequently throughout my marriage. After Heloise died, I could not watch either one of them ever again. I haven't watched them again. I couldn't. And eventually I gave them away. But I was at an assembly in Richmond in March of 2011, and a young lady named Samantha that I knew after the assembly program, she said she'd like to introduce me to her aunt. So she took me over to her aunt. I met her, spoke a few words with her aunt who lived in Richmond. Well, I wasn't sure if Samantha was trying to play matchmaker. So that Thursday night at our congregation meeting, I approached Samantha and I kind of discreetly asked a couple of questions to explore, was that what she was trying to do? And her answers told me, yes, that was her intention. I thought about it. I remembered, Judy, that, problem is, whereas with Heloise, she and I had seen each other over the years in situations in which neither of us felt the need to put our best foot forward. So we knew, each of us knew what the other was really like. But here, there's somebody I haven't had that opportunity with. Another thing about Samantha was that Samantha's aunt is Samantha told me that her aunt was the youngest child in her mother's family. Well, now I knew that, I had a history that I related well to women who were the oldest child in the family. Judy was the older of 2. Heloise was technically second, but second by a margin of 15 minutes. For all practical purposes, she and her twin sister, Hazetta, identical twins, were tied for the position of oldest. And so and also at one of my previous jobs, I had a relationship. This was nothing romantic. Nothing romantic happened, nothing physical, but still it's a somewhere I wouldn't go now based on what I know now. If I'd known then what I know now, I wouldn't have let things go that far. But we, we're known to work very close together. And I later read an article in Wall Street Journal that described that as a work spouse relationship. And that was during my marriage to Judy, by the way, that developed. But in any case, she too was the oldest of 4 kids. And so, I said, I don't know about going the youngest. Well, Cindy, a lot of people sent me sympathy cards right after Heloise's death. Cindy waited a few months, sent me one in March. She's one of Heloise's homegirls. Lady, my name is Cynthia Jones. Anyway, she sent me a card in March, and I called her up and thanked her for the card. And we talked a little bit. She had sent me a picture of her with her baby granddaughter, and so we talked a little bit on the phone. And now again, the things going on behind the scenes I didn't know about. okay, Heloise went back to her friend Genesia, who was another of Heloise's homegirls, and said, "Hey, Charlie called me, the other night. We talked. Genesia kind of gave her the look, and Cindy goes, well, it's just a phone call." And Genesia told her, "He ain't calling me." And later, one of the first major decisions I made after Heloise's death was I went out and bought a new car. And anyway, I had to be special ordered, manufactured in Germany, because I wanted a Volkswagen Jetta TDI with a stick, and they didn't have any on any lots in America with sticks, so they had to order it. So finally, in April, my car was delivered. I took delivery of the car in April, and so I sent pictures around to a bunch of people, a bunch of family members, and Dorothy, and a bunch of other people I knew through Heloise. I sent it to Cindy, and Cindy showed it to Genesia again, and look, Charlie texted me this, and Genesia gave her a look, and Cindy like, just a text message. He ain't texting me. Well, then, finally I settled in, as I knew, of out of Heloise's homegirls, Cindy was one again that I really, had a high regard for. I could see that she was really a good woman, and so anyway, I was in Connecticut for Heloise's granddaughter's graduation from college, and I called Cindy and told her I would like to get better acquainted. And we talked for some length. And during the conversation, I learned Cindy's position in her family, by the way. She's the oldest of 8 kids. And that was something I didn't know. But I was like, wow, that's interesting. And we talked for a while, and then she said she'd think about it. And next day, she texted me back and said, yes, let's talk. And so I called her on Monday from Bradley Airport when I was waiting for my plane to go home, and we talked for a while. We began talking every day. She came down to Virginia first weekend in June, and and things were kind of awkward in that visit, but it was good though. We went out to a museum in DC and went to dinner. We had a couple that had been friends of Heloise and mine, and now they were friends with Cindy and me. And in fact, the wife of this couple would end up becoming our wedding planner, but and the husband would be my best man. But we were gradually coming to love each other. We had high regard for each other all along. She had seen how I treated Heloise, and and so we gradually came to love each other. And again, I was the first one to tell her that I loved her. And then I planned a visit to New Haven on the weekend that my congregation would be going to the convention in Richmond. So I went up to New Haven because the following weekend I'd be going down to Winston-Salem to be with Kim at her convention. And so I planned the whole thing. So there was another couple with us. They were our chaperones that morning, and so I asked them if they had a few minutes, and they said sure. So I drove down to the New Haven Green. In New England, every town or city has a village green, and so I drove her down there and proposed to her there, and she said yes. And so from that point on, we made our wedding plans. Genesia ended up being her matron of honor. Another of Heloise's homegirls also was one of Cindy's bridesmaids. I remember Cindy telling me at one point that I had a rap, and at our wedding talk, the elder who would give our wedding talk mentioned that in his talk, that she had said that. So we arranged to have our wedding. In this case, we got married in a hotel because we were able, that way out of town friends didn't have to find their way to the Kingdom Hall. They could just stay in the hotel. We had a block of rooms that they got a discounted rate for, and they could just come down and attend the wedding and the reception, and then and they could stay and see the sights in Washington D.C. That's what we did, and we honeymooned in Jamaica, and again it was a beautiful honeymoon. Really enjoyed it. Stayed in a little villa that had a pool that it shared with I think 8 other villas, but we generally had the pool to ourselves, and it was nice, and we could go down by the water during our honeymoon. And then one time we're down by the water, and some guy came up to ask if we were having a rendezvous. And here we were in the couples resort, Sandals Resort, and we've traveled to Atlanta. Sometimes Cindy has relatives in Atlanta. We've been to Niagara Falls also. A nice visit there. Okay, you have to get another call, but okay, Lorienda. Okay, well, I'll see you probably in another of these live discussions. And so yeah, okay, I'll get to that. Yeah, and so let me get to this. Because the advice I would say is, I found works best is somebody I've been acquainted with for years, and I know this is sometimes difficult, particularly when you're young, and particularly when you have been kind of out of the social circle. But it's best for a man and a woman to get acquainted in settings in which neither one feels the need to put their best foot forward for the other. Best in group settings where you're with a group of other people. In my case, my second and third marriages were both to people who had been friends with my previous wife, and so in that way, we had an opportunity to get to know each other, and in that type of setting where neither of us felt the need to put our best foot forward. But that's the thing I would say. And what I said about the fact that true love is driven by what you know about, what two people know about each other, not just by what they feel about each other. It's a feeling that develops out of what they know. And so that's the thing I would say. Always, it's how you treat the other person. It also helps to be known, to have a reputation for being nice to members of the opposite sex, being nice to your mother, being nice if you're a guy, being nice to your father if you're a girl, being nice to your sisters, again, a guy, to your brothers if you're a girl and you have brothers. Being nice to people if you're known, and if you're known for being unselfish, that helps too. If you're known for insisting on your way, you're going to have a harder time finding somebody who really loves you for who you are. So these are some of the things that I would say. Anyway, now Cindy, since then, I've retired now. We moved to Charlotte, and now we're in Connecticut. One of the things I like to do is I like to cook, and so I cook most of our meals, and she, of course, does a lot of the other work we do. One thing I learned in college, one thing, and this helped me in socialization in college, I learned how to play bid whist. uh, card game. Watched other guys play it. I picked up on how to play it. Cindy plays bid whist too. And so, of course, with the virus pandemic, we haven't been having people over, but when it becomes feasible to have people over, we're going to do it again. We've had card parties, and we're going to have a bid whist party when it becomes feasible and safe to do so. Uh, and the thing we find is our love continues to grow over time. That's the thing. We continue to love each other more, and we like when we can do things together, even just watching TV together when we're largely stuck in the house. And thank you, Nita. I know I'm kind of near the end of my hour here, but Cindy and I had a lot of nice experiences together, unique hours. We went to a convention in Germany in 2014, and that was really nice experience. Got to meet people from all over the world there. As far away as Botswana and the Philippines and Australia, and as well as people from Germany. That was nice. We, another thing that has been nice was that and also in 2014, I was appointed an elder in the congregation, and that was a big thing for us. And Cindy values and the fact that I'm serving. I value having a wife like Cindy. She is having a supportive life like her. I really value it. That's what I have to say. Is one thing about Jehovah's Witnesses, we don't have clergy. We don't have paid clergy. Elders handle all the functions of teaching the congregation. We give the talks. We a lot of our meetings do involve question and answer parts. We get comments from the audience, and elders handle that. Ministerial servants help out with some of those parts too. But so anyway, that's a privilege. And yeah, that's true. Yeah. Linda. Okay. Yeah, I know that's Linda talking there. Yeah. And I really feel that way too. It's something that from the start was always important to me, always critical to me. It was important to me with Heloise and important to me with Cindy. Yeah, I could tell that. At first, I thought the autism with us was Nita, and I could see that's you, Linda. Yeah. And how's Steve doing? And how's your daughter? Oh, I wish I could pull up her name. Emily. That's both of you all. Okay. But I hope you all have taken something home, some encouragement from this, and benefited in some ways from this. And okay. Yeah, Emily and Steve are both doing great. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Well, that's good. And I know Emily is getting the best parenting that she can get, and that's important. How are things? The wildfires pretty much died down now there. Oh, you're from the Philippines, and you have your beautiful son with autism. Yeah, well, that's nice, Mary Jane. And Thank you, Mary Jane. Yeah, yeah. So that's really nice. Yeah, we met a couple when we were in Germany. The husband from Australia and the wife was from the Philippines. And so you're from Florida. You have two autistic children, 7 and 5. So are they? And so in your part of California, Linda, they're doing better. That's good. Yeah, yeah, that's right. Well, hopefully, as we get into the colder season, we'll get out of the danger of wildfires at least until next year. Hopefully, maybe next year it won't be so bad. Uh, okay. Well, I think I've gone a little over time. So, anyway, I'd like to thank you all for being here, and I hope that again that I've um, shared some encouragement. Last words about love. Well, again, love, like I said, it's based on what you know, and it's something that it really amazed me, though how Lois and I fell in love, and how Cindy and I fell in love, because we'd had high regard for each other all along, but we weren't in love with each other. Just but as we got better acquainted, as we got to know each other better and got to talking regularly, that high regard we had for each other developed into true love. Now, Mary Jane, now you will not worry your son. That's true love. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Mary Jane. All right. Well, say good night to everyone. All right. Oh, my pleasure. All right. Good night, everyone.